I was raised in a Catholic family. I'm one of seven, a large family. And at the time I didn't know my mother was an alcoholic. So therefore I inherited that gene. I firmly believe that. I started at an early age drinking, and I can remember that in my family, any type of party that was at the house, alcohol was always prevalent. And I just, at a young age, I just thought that that was, you know, fine to do, not knowing that, you know, I had that alcoholic gene, you know, and I liked that feeling it gave me. It changed me, gave me that warm feeling inside. It made me funny, you know, not shy, and I chased that feeling for a long time. When I was about 16 years old, my dad passed away from Lou Gehrig's disease, so he was about 45 years old, so it took him about 5 years to die. He was diagnosed around 40 years old, but at 45 he passed away, and I was just about 16 going on 17 years old, and it was really a struggle for me. My drinking increased. By the time I was 18, you know, I couldn't see eye to eye with my mother. I left home and really never looked back. At a young age, I met a girl, and the attraction for me was the same. You know, we drank and drugged. You know, that was the attraction. We had 2 children by that marriage, and naturally, because of the way we were, the marriage never lasted, and she left. She left me with my 2 children. My son was 5, my daughter was 3, and I raised them best I could. But I can remember in my home, they told me, you know, that it was okay to drink, but don't ever try those drugs. And by the time I was 18, 19 years old, you know, I was already on my way of drinking and drugging. And that progressed, and it kept going on and on and on. And I can remember, it was March of 1995, I was really hurting, and I was really sick and tired of being sick and tired. There's a cliche that they say in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I can remember getting a hold of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you know, I continued on that path till probably early April, and I can remember my first meeting was April 3rd, 1995. You know, I can remember after I got sober, there was like this huge hole inside me. There was no peace inside me, you know, and I thought, well, Alcoholics Anonymous was the way to go. It was going to save me. It was going to, you know, change me. And for the most part, it did, you know, and it continues to change me, and I'm very grateful for that program. But, you know, for me, like I said, there was no peace. I continued to go to Catholic Mass. I remember living in Honeybrook, I'd go down to 6 o'clock Mass at St. Joe's in Downingtown, and I'd come home and really feel frustrated about, you know, there was no sermon. There was, well, you know, it was the whole Catholic Mass, and I didn't really know about the Bible at all, and I'd come home feeling frustrated, and I cycled at the time, and I'd get on my bike and I'd ride out in the Amish farmland praying to God and talking to God, and I'd get more out of that than any Catholic church service that I was at. And that continued for a while. The frustration continued, and I shared that with my sponsor. And I can remember him, you know, listening and smiling, and you know, finally he invited me to this church. I was, you know, I had resisted for a little while until finally I gave in and realized that, you know, maybe I should give it a shot. So I walked in here, and I can remember sitting in a pew with a big family, and I heard this pastor, and he started preaching right out of the Bible, and my jaw dropped. You know, here I was, 44 years old, and not knowing anything about the Bible. You know, I felt kind of foolish, but you know, I felt like I belonged. I felt such peace, you know, and I was on fire. I could hardly wait to get back here the next Sunday. Well, that continued for quite a few months, and I can remember Pastor Cook giving an altar calling, and I can remember being there and having my head down in a moment of prayer, and I can remember there was, you know, a little bit of background music, and, you know, he was, you know, giving that altar call, and I just felt so moved by the Lord, you know, that tears were coming down my cheeks, you know, and you know, not only, you know, like back in '95 when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, I felt good, But in here, at that time, my heart was exploding, and that hole inside of me started to close, and that peace about me started to enter into my heart, and I knew that was, God tugging at me. So I gave that's the day I gave myself to the Lord. I became a child of God. It was August 26, 2000. I'll never forget that. And shortly after that, I was baptized. And there's one Bible verse that I have that I want to read. It's Psalm 40. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth and hymn of praise to our God. Many will see him and fear and put their trust in the Lord. I love that psalm because that's what he did for me. Picked me up out of that mud and muck and mire. There's a slogan in AA that says self-will run riot, and that's what it was. It was my will, not God's will. Today I lived, try and live as best I can and understand God's will for me. So I'm truly grateful for what he's done for me. My name is Fred, and this is my story, how I let God take control.